Hey, folks, welcome to the Battles of the First World War podcast. Joining me today are Ron Howard and his nephew, Adam Pearce. Ron is a lecturer at the University of Britain in Bahrain. Adam is based out of Nottinghamshire, which I've probably just butchered that, and I apologize. Both men hail from Sheffield, from which the Sheffield Pals were raised during the First World War. Ron and Adam have traveled the Western Front in recent years as part of a very interesting project, which they've come on the show to talk about today. Adam has even traveled further out than the Western Front, and I'm sure we'll get into that as well. So Ron and Adam, thank you both for reaching out and coming on the podcast. And if you can, please tell me, how do we say Nottinghamshire?
Nottinghamshire.
Nottinghamshire. I'm so sorry.
No, it's fine. It's not too bad. Not too bad at all. But thank you very much anyway for the invite. Really pleased to be here. Really excited. As I've mentioned to you before, I've been listening to you since the Verdun podcasts.
Thank you. So, gentlemen, I think we'll just dive right into the first question. And Ron, if you would start us off. So, would you tell us a bit more about yourselves, as well as what it was like growing up in Sheffield? Like, is the memory of the Sheffield Pals still a palpable thing even today?
Yes, thank you very much for inviting me on the show. I'm really honoured. As with Adam, I'm a long-time listener. I think I go back prior to the Verdun one, but excellent shows every time. Anyway, as you mentioned, I am Adam's uncle. I grew up in Sheffield, Yorkshire, or Yorkshire, as you would say, during the 1960s and 70s. However, I've spent most of my adult life in Bahrain, mainly working in finance, although latterly in academia as a lecturer. I also like to think of myself as an amateur historian, and I'm particularly interested in both World Wars and the Cold War. I visited many World War II and Cold War sites in the Far East, including Hiroshima, the DMZ in Korea, and Hanoi in Vietnam. Like with Adam, I've also visited the Western Front several times. Sheffield is, of course, a northern city in Yorkshire. During my childhood, it was known as a centre for making steel, especially stainless steel. Your knives and forks may well have been made out of it. In fact, 3 generations of our family worked in the steel industry. I was the first one to break that. My experience of growing up there is almost 30 years earlier than Adam's. In fact, World War II had only finished 14 years before I was born, so memories were still very fresh.
Yes.
The story of the Sheffield Pals is still well known in the city. In case your listeners are not aware, the Pals are a group of pals or friends from similar groups, trades and professions who volunteered to join the army when the war broke out. The idea was that recruiting numbers would be boosted if friends could serve together. So there's a natural affiliation because we come from the same area, and we believe if we were alive at the same time, we would have likely volunteered and maybe suffered their same fate, which was, of course, they were virtually wiped out within the first 10 minutes of the opening day of the Somme, a day that is certainly well remembered in Sheffield. There's an excellent book on that I recommend to your listeners. Sadly, I don't have it with me, but it is A Covenant with Death by John Harris, and it ends with the lines, 2 years in the making, 10 minutes in the destroying.
Correct. Yep.
So I'll hand over to Adam now.
Yeah, so Ron is obviously my uncle. I grew up on the outskirts of Sheffield during the late 90s and early 2000s, so a little bit younger than Ron. And although we do share the same birthday, and apart from few brief periods,
yes, we do. Yes,
that's so cool.
Yeah, we share the same birthday. And apart from a few brief periods away, I've spent most of my adult life living within a couple of hours of Sheffield. I had a brief period in America and a brief period in Dubai. But yeah, now I live in a small town on the outskirts of Nottingham. Some of your listeners may know the Sherwood Foresters Regiment, which I think is now the Mercian Regiment. So yeah, that's where I'm from. And I'm fortunate to work in a sales role that allows me to travel extensively across the world.
Okay.
Because of that opportunity, I've been able to visit sites and battlefield sites and grave sites, not only World War One but pre-World War One, in South Africa,
Right.
And then World War Two sites in Malaysia, in Australia, graves in Australia, South Korea, all over the world, really, probably with the only exception being South America and Central America.
Amazing.
So yeah, so I combine my work with my passion when I get the opportunity, and then obviously in the UK, where the majority of the grave sites, which we'll talk about, are, I tend to spend my weekends looking for them. And I have a 1-year-old son who travels with me now, so it's good to get him to sleep. So he's now also the probably the most visited Victoria Cross grave person at 1 year old, anyway.
he's seen more World War One sites already at one than like many people.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah,
yeah. Well, you can,
sorry,
perhaps you can grow you can raise your son like me. I've never taken my daughter to Disneyland, but I did take her to the Argonne Forest and I showed her unexploded ordnance.
Good choice.
Right? I mean, Dad of the Year here. Hello.
Well, yeah, my son's never been to Disney's, but he's been to Brompton Cemetery in London to visit 13 graves. So yeah, it's a very similar situation.
Good stuff, kids.
But yeah, so going back to the Sheffield Pals are still remembered, and not just the Sheffield Pals, but all World War One combatants are remembered in the UK. As anybody who's been to the UK, you may have seen memorials around all of the small villages, all of the cities, memorialising World War One and World War Two victims. But obviously, the vast majority of those are World War One.
Right.
And also around this time of year, as we come up to the armistice, there are several ceremonies. And actually, my father has been invited to go to Sheffield Park on the Somme next year to commemorate the 110th anniversary of the first day.
Oh, amazing.
So yeah, still remembered, still fondly remembered as well. And particularly at this time of year as well.
Oh, amazing. It's just like, first off, great that you have this your sales job and you use it, like you take advantage of the opportunities that it offers to you, of like, hey, I'm traveling, while I'm out there, I'm going to take advantage and go see a few cool sites that interest me. Like, very, very lucky. And you obviously, like, you realize it because you're taking the opportunity. It's great.
I mean,
it's great to hear.
It's fantastic to be able to do that and get somebody else to pay for it as well.
Yes, yeah, true. That's fantastic. Yeah, but also really, really, really interesting to hear that the Sheffield Pals and all of the British Tommies are still well remembered in the UK. We've been there a few times, my family and I, and I'm always on the lookout for memorials and the like, and it's always amazing, like in London, to see.
Well, you're welcome to Sheffield, to visit Sheffield anytime.
Thank you, and I hope to take you up on that. I would like to see more of England. So it's just good to see the memorials and see, like, the remembrances. It's all still there.
I had a quick walk up to mine, actually, my local one this morning, actually, and there were, to give you an example, there's about 10,000 people who live in this town, and there were 86 now, and there were 86 names of First World War combatants, Tommies, and about 15 World War Two. So that gives you an idea of the scale.
Yeah. So
which obviously
not to go too far off topic, but World War One was obviously the more brutally expensive one in terms of lives lost, as opposed to World War II. And I know, like in our here in the United States, like World War II is the quote unquote the good war. It was very clear cut, good guys, bad guys, and it was everything was worth the sacrifice. But my understanding is, my sense is that in Britain, like, yes, you guys have that as well with World War II, but like World War One is like it's still bigger because of like just the scale of loss. Is that correct?
Well, there are a few things on that. One, that we didn't necessarily have to join in the first place.
Okay.
Second is because of these PALS battalions that there were huge losses in neighbourhoods, so that is still felt. Okay. And third, that when after the Treaty of Versailles, it was just like a 20-year intermission before the beginning of the second. So, as you say, it wasn't so clear cut about a good or bad war. But once Germany invaded Belgium, we just went in after that because we needed to keep the Channel ports free.
Right.
I think there's probably, I think every family in the UK can trace their history back and will have either a death in service or somebody wounded in service in World War One, and that's not quite the same in World War Two. I know from our side, we had I don't know whether it be my great uncle who died just after the war. He fought in the war, but he died of the Spanish flu. And then on my father's side, there was his granddad, my great grandfather, was wounded on the Somme. So, and I think that's a similar story throughout the UK.
Oh, okay. All right.
Just for information for you, both grandfathers on the Howard side were reserved occupation, working in the steelworks. So I guess they had to make their own decision whether they wanted to join up or remain in situ.
Right.
It's a tough decision to make, really.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a real pull in either direction, like stay home or do, quote unquote, like, do your bit, like the posters always say, but they were doing their bit, weren't they? Like they were.
Yeah, yes, they were. They were
reserved occupation,
making steel for armaments.
How did your interest in the Great War begin? And I put here, did it start with World War II, which we joke is the gateway drug to history. So how did your interest in, Ron? I know the effects of the war were all around you from the time you were born, right?
Well, yes, because both my parents were veterans of World War II. In fact, they met each other during the war.
Really?
Towards the end of the war, yeah. My mother operated searchlights during the London Blitz. The idea is to illuminate German bombers for anti-aircraft guns. I don't know how successful she was. My father served most of the war in Gibraltar.
Okay.
He kept the lights on there because they did. There was no blackout in Gibraltar, and he saw the sinking of the aircraft carrier, the HMS Ark Royal, in 1941. I also had a German uncle who served in the German army. It was all a bit up there. We didn't really know what he did, and because of my father's service, it was better not to ask him too much.
Right.
So ex-servicemen were everywhere in our neighbourhood. I'll give you an example. One neighbour had a limp, which was an injury caused from being a Japanese prisoner of war. He'd been in Singapore when that was invaded. Another one had worked security for entertainers who were entertaining troops overseas. So I basically grew up listening to stories of World War II from those who had lived them, rather than memories passed on through generations. There was even a visit to my school from the Chelsea pensioners. I don't know if you know who the Chelsea pensioners are.
No.
But Chelsea pensioners live in a retirement home for army veterans that are over 65 years old.
Okay.
You may have seen them. They wear red uniforms and a tricorn hat. It's a very iconic uniform. Today, those veterans, maybe if they're very old, would be World War II veterans. At that time, they were World War I veterans, and they were visiting schools to relate their experiences, albeit the sanitized versions, to explain the brutality and futility of war. And that really got me enthralled. And I took it up from there. And I've been interested ever since.
Oh, amazing. Adam?
Mine's quite different, actually. Obviously, I didn't really, although I've heard the same stories from my grandparents that Ron did. I didn't, kind of the time that I was growing up in the early 2000s, there weren't that many, certainly there were no World War One veterans left, or not that I knew of, and very few World War Two veterans. So I only heard the stories secondhand. My interest from World War One actually came from the Victoria Cross, which is something we're going to talk about shortly. My passion has always been about the Victoria Cross and the acts behind them and the men behind them and the acts of courage and what drove them to that kind of act. And that started with a 1964 film called Zulu.
Have you seen it, Mike? Have you seen Zulu?
I must admit that I have not. I've seen clips of it, and I understand the stories about Rorke's Drift, correct?
Rorke's Drift, yes, that's correct. Yeah. So it was, if you know Michael Caine, that was his first feature film. So in that's it. I mean, there's a little bit of poetic license for the film, but basically the story goes 150 men against 4,000 Zulus, a colonial war from 1879. And there were 11 Victoria Crosses awarded during that action, which is the most for a single action, even to this day now. You could argue that some of them weren't just justified, but that's not something to go in at the minute. So at the end of the film, they do a roll call of the 11 VCs, which as a child got me very interested in that. So I started researching those. And when you start researching the Victoria Cross, it inevitably leads you to World War One. Just under half of all of the people were awarded during World War One. And I find it fascinating because it's something like for me, it's the end of the chivalry meets kind of mechanical warfare. So that kind of got me involved and interested in it. And then we followed that up with several visits to the Western Front and other sites, as I mentioned.
So I'm actually going to quote myself from an old episode about the Victoria Crosses earned on the first day of the Battle of the Somme. And here is what I wrote a few years ago. So, quote, "For us, Yanks and Sammies, the Victoria Cross is the equivalent of the American Medal of Honor. The Victoria Cross was first created on the 29th of January, 1856, at the tail end of the Crimean War, by then Queen Victoria and Prince Albert for the above-mentioned acts of extreme bravery carried out under direct enemy fire. The VC was created with the idea of it being awarded to any soldier or sailor of any rank. In contrast, Imperial Germany's highest military award, the Pour le Mérite, was almost exclusively reserved for upper echelon officers. The Victoria Cross, from 1856 on to this day, is made of the bronze from a Russian field gun captured during the Crimean War. That bronze is still used today, and there is enough of it left to make about 80 more medals. The cross is a simple design, and it is simple on purpose. The cross's shape is similar to that of the German Iron Cross, and many military medals, even today, seem to share that same general shape and design. Over the cross is the British lion above the crown, and below the crown is the draped banner with the words, "For Valor." The medal is affixed to the metal strip on a ribbon, and on the back of the ribbon's metal strip, the name of the VC recipient will be stamped. The medal itself, as it is made of bronze, is not very expensive in itself. Of course, What it stands for is something that cannot be measured in the weight or value of the metal it is made of. During World War I, 628 Victoria Crosses were awarded, the highest amount before and since the war. In World War II, the UK would award the VC a total of 182 times, just for a comparison. The Victoria Cross is Britain's highest award for valor on the battlefield. Like the American Medal of Honor, you would have to go way above and beyond the call of duty to be considered for this medal. Like the American Medal of Honor, the acts required to be awarded the VC bring with it the high likelihood that it will be awarded posthumously. So, end quote from my writing there. And it turns out that when I wrote this episode way back in 2018, some things have been updated since then. And I would love to get those updates now so we can share them with the listeners.
Excellent. An excellent monologue there. Brilliant. 3 points that I'd just like to make on that. The first one was originally the Victoria Cross was not only awarded for acts of valour in front of the enemy. That changed in 1881.
Okay.
You could actually win it for dangerous acts, and there were 6 sailors who won it in 1867 in the Andaman Islands, rescuing a prisoner through a major storm.
Okay.
And also one guy who won it from getting rid of bombs in a burning train in the late 1870s. So it actually changed in 1881 for acts of valour in front of the enemy. And originally it couldn't be awarded posthumously.
Interesting. Okay.
So it was only changed in 1907 to be awarded posthumously. So there are several men who died who didn't receive the Victoria Cross who probably would have won it had that been available to them before that time.
Okay, I didn't realize that.
Another one there is you mentioned that it was available to sailors and infantry or the army. It was actually available to anybody, and there were 6 instances of civilians winning the Victoria Cross.
Really? I was not aware of this. Amazing. Wow.
But that hasn't happened since the late 1800s.
Okay.
So there were 6 instances of that. And then what has also changed through research recently is that the material that is used is now believed to be from a Chinese gun from the First Opium War, which I think was in 1860. There are probably some that were made from the Russian cannon, but they were the early ones. Post-war, from 1914 onwards, it was definitely not that material. It was the Chinese Opium War gun.
Okay, bronze from Chinese gun. Okay,
That's because they ran out of it, isn't it, during the First World War?
It was actually before the First World War. Everything from 1914 onwards is believed to be of the Chinese material.
Okay. Ooh, we'll have to issue a correction there. Well, very good. Well, thank you so much for that. Appreciate it, and so good to get updated information. All right. So the VCs, Adam, you start reading about VCs when you're younger, and of course that's where your interest in the Great War grows. Now, tell us about your project where you guys travel to the Western Front.
So my project is actually, I hope to visit every grave or memorial of a Victoria Cross winner. Now there were 1,358 awarded to 1,355 men, plus an additional 6 Victoria Crosses that were awarded from the Commonwealth Award. The Australians, the New Zealanders and the Canadians split out in the late 90s, and they've awarded 6 since then. So my aim is to visit every gravesite, every memorial of the winners of the Victoria Cross. Now, some were buried at sea, some were lost at sea, some were cremated, some of the Indians, some of the Nepalese winners were cremated. So there are around 1,000 sites to visit. I have currently visited, I'm up to around 350 at the minute, and they are in around 56, 57 different countries.
Whoa. Okay.
So my first aim is to visit them because I want to remember them. I want to pay my respects to them. And when I started visiting them, I noticed that some of particularly the older ones, and not the ones that were kept by the Commonwealth War Graves or more local graves, were kind of a little bit run down. So my second aim is to kind of highlight this with the Victoria Cross Trust, and I know some people do that as well. But then my third aim is to also bring this back into the memory. When we were there in August this year, on the Western Front, the decline in tourists was significant from 10 years ago. So I want to kind of bring that to the forefront of everyone's mind again. I'm fascinated by the acts that these people have done, by the courage, by their life, by what drove them to do this. And everybody that I've spoken to about this are also very interested. It's just that they don't have that ability to find somewhere to read about them, to see them, or they don't have the knowledge, because there are the places to find this information out. And it's now a really good time to do this because, unfortunately, the Imperial War Museum have removed their Victoria Cross exhibition just this year. So that's kind of the aims of the project, to remember them, to increase awareness of them, and also to make sure that they have all of the ones that are not looked after by the Commonwealth War Graves have some kind of memorial, some kind of grave that is well kept.
Yeah. Okay. To take care of them too. Yeah. Now this must give you, obviously, like you know, when you go to visit these sites, like this gives you a sense of purpose. Like, hey, I'm going to see these recipients or the graves and memorials. It's amazing. That it gives you a focus for like what you're doing, like rather than just going to see the psalm in general or something like that. Really cool. Really cool.
Yeah.
Ron, go ahead. Sorry.
But yeah, I was just to go. I'm not going to. I think Ron wants to touch on something like that shortly. But yeah, it gives you a real purpose instead of just driving around and seeing the sights on the summit. It gives you a real purpose of where you are, and not only in the Western Front, but when you're looking for something in the UK, you know exactly where you're looking for and who you're looking for.
Amazing. Ron?
Yeah, I will be saying something about that sense of purpose, but if you'd like to know how I got involved.
Yes.
Well, I've known that Adam has an interest in VC holders for many years, and I've also been visited the Western Front as early as 1985 with my own father. I've had a big gap between that up to 2017. I think I invited you, Adam, is that right, in 2017? My invite?
Possibly, yes. I can't remember, but yes.
I think so. But I hadn't realised how deep or knowledgeable he is until our recent trip. In fact, even in this podcast, I'm finding out how knowledgeable he is. So we've been there 3 times. On our first visit, which was in 2017, Victoria Cross holders were never mentioned. We were just these, as you say, tourists without much purpose other than to go to see various war memorials, such as Verdun and again Thiepval, Newfoundland Memorial Park. So just your normal type of tourist. We were going to go again, but then COVID came, so it wasn't until 2023 for the second visit. And that morphed into half visiting memorials and half visiting and taking pictures of these headstones. So in that visit, we went to the Menin Gate and Thiepval, and for the VC headstones, many places, including, of course, Tyne Cot. From then on until our next visit this year, Adam sent me photographs of where he'd been and the headstones at UK sites and, as he's mentioned, in South Africa. Also in China, although the headstone is missing. Maybe Adam can explain that. This year's visit was a full-on trip of visiting VC headstones in places like Luz, Arras, and Japel. And while we were talking, I realised his expert knowledge, and I've encouraged him to share this knowledge so that others can become interested in and as motivated as he is. And of course, being on your wonderful podcast is part of that. Adam, can you explain why that headstone has disappeared in Shanghai?
Yes.
Yes, I can. So it was a gentleman named Edward Banford who won his VC in Zeebrugge, and he died off the coast of China in 1928. And he was buried in Shanghai, and the gravesite, I forget the name of the gravesite now, just in front of the Jing'an Memorial in Jing'an Temple in China. In the late 60s and 70s, Mao, in the Great Leap Forward, repatriated the land. Let's call it repatriated the gravesite for burial, for building work, and now it's only what was the gravesite is now a park. So there is a memorial there, and I went to that memorial, but obviously we couldn't, unfortunately, see the graves because they're no longer there.
Interesting. Yeah. Wow. Which is a whole other part of history happening, like Mao and the Great Leap Forward and all of that Cultural Revolution. Wow. Amazing. So you want to get the word out, just for folks to be aware of VCs, the Victoria Cross, the recipients, and also, to increase awareness of the men buried overseas and to have care for the graves. So the podcast here is one way to do it. Do you have any other way that you're getting the word out that we can share or anything?
Yeah, we're actually looking to do our own podcast as
Fantastic.
well. We're recording our first podcast on the 6th of December. An introduction, which I'm currently writing as we speak. I'm feeling your pain on how to do that. It's quite difficult to get the right tone.
Yes, and just say goodbye to your wife and family, because this is going to be your new obsession.
So we've got one every month planned in for the start to give.
What's it called, Adam?
It's going to be called Victoria Cross Hunters in Search of Valor.
Wow, amazing!
I hope you'll be one of our first downloaders, Mike.
Oh my God, are you kidding? Of course I will be. Yes, this is going to be great. Wow, this is so exciting! And
then hopefully we'll be looking at obviously in terms of the target audience. I want to bring this to the younger generation who maybe don't have the knowledge of the First World War, maybe don't have the knowledge of the Victoria Crosses. So we'll be using medium like YouTube if I can get myself to figure out how to use some videos. I've got several images of graves which we can start for Instagram, for Facebook. It's just a case of getting those going. But the podcast is going to be recorded on 6th of December, followed by one every month there on afterwards, until I decide that we need to do it every 3 months because it's too much work. Like you.
Yep.
And also. As I mentioned earlier, the Lord Ashcroft's collection of Victoria Crosses has been removed from the Imperial War Museum earlier this year. So there is no real place to go to see Victoria Crosses. So, I mean, the overall aim, and this is a long-term aim, is, and it may even be pie in the sky, is to hopefully get a Victoria Cross museum. I know there's a Legion of Honor museum in America. We don't have that at the minute in the UK, so that would be something that would be absolutely fantastic. But maybe it's certainly a long way off if achievable.
The Imperial War Museum, the removal, is that just a temporary thing, or is that just it's
No, they
seems
had a
to be a
15-year
full-time.
lease. Yeah, they had a 15-year lease that ended in June of this year. They extended it to September.
Okay.
And now all of the Victoria Crosses that Lord Ashcroft owns, which I think is
How
somewhere
many
in the
does he
region
have?
of, somewhere in the region of 200. I'm not entirely sure.
Okay.
Are now in a vault and not on public display. So that such is so sad for me in that respect.
Honestly, yes. Yeah, such a shame.
Are you aware, Mike, that in March this year, there's a National Medal of Honor Museum was opened in Texas that was funded by the Texas Lottery?
No, I was not. I know we have a CMOHS, a Medal of Honor Society,
Right.
and I believe there's a museum as well, but I haven't visited.
Well,
And
as
I'm
Adam
unaware of
says,
this one.
if we're reaching for the sky, the ultimate commemoration would be a museum dedicated to Victoria Cross holders. And
Yes.
it's a surprise to me that it hasn't happened yet, because the patron of the Victoria Cross Association is our King Charles.
Mm-hmm.
So if he was to support it, I'm sure it's something that would happen.
Yes.
So
Very
let's
much
hope
so.
this is to our podcast.
Yes. Yeah. Well, just on the podcast, as soon as you guys have a link to it and everything, like I will, I'll promote it here to
Thank
get
you.
the word out.
Thank you very much.
Fantastic.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. So we have, you have been, you guys, particularly you, Adam, you've been all over the earth visiting these graves and memorials of Victoria Cross recipients. So what has it been like traveling to these sites, and what has been a poignant memory for each of you?
Well, I've always, I think, as I mentioned, I'm fortunate to travel all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
And through it, I've been able to visit the memorials in many, many countries. And I think I've always appreciated the peaceful nature of the sites, especially the graves that aren't visited regularly, even when they're located beside busy roads or some even in the heart of a city. There's a sense of quiet and calm
Mm-hmm.
that settles within you, I believe. But most of the sites I have been easy to reach, but some can be incredibly challenging to find. I remember a few in South Africa where the roads were probably little more than dirt tracks, and they had antelope, they had zebra, they had giraffe, and other wildlife on the side. And it was such a peaceful place when you got to the top of that hill. Can't really comprehend, and it was a beautiful place to be buried, I would imagine, as well. I've also been to Malaysia, and in a different sense, where you go to a graveyard in the UK and there's no warnings. With this graveyard in Malaysia, there was a warning of wild boar on the loose, and also a local zoo had lost some baboons a couple of years ago, and they were still on the loose as well. So, yeah, it's kind of things like that that bring you, obviously, really bring things in a different society. But I think the main thing is, for me, the peaceful nature of it, and also the human element of it. This wasn't it wasn't a Victoria Cross grave, but we were at Teepval in the first instance in 2017, so 101 years after the battle. And I remember seeing I don't know whether it was a wreath or a note, but it said something along the lines of, "To my dad, I never met you, but you'll always been with me." So,
wow.
I mean, that guy must have been 101, 102, maybe.
Yeah.
So the human element of it is something that I enjoy, and I try and look for as well when I'm visiting them.
That's amazing. Wow.
Oh, yeah.
From my side, of course, I've enjoyed my time with Adam. The journey can be
Of course, I've enjoyed my time with my nephew, my uncle.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah. I didn't want to prompt you on it. The journey can be exhausting, though, as during the last two visits, Adam has driven each time over 1,000 kilometers or 600 miles in 4 days. It's really full on, just with a break in the evenings, relaxing and eating in town squares such as Albert, Bapaume, Saint-Quentin, and Ypres. So I would like to give a shout out to the Commonwealth Graves Commission. However remote or small a cemetery is, they're always immaculately well looked after. But as we've already touched on, we've also noticed that the number of visitors seems to be falling, which I kind of suppose is inevitable given the time. And during our last two visits, we only really saw people in Ypres and nowhere else. Hopefully Adam's vision will help with numbers. I think we've also visited well-known cemeteries in Tynecourt, but also remote ones where there are only a few graves, like Lichfield Crater, difficult to access at the end of rutted farmers' tracks, and those that are parts of French communal cemeteries, one that you well know, such as the surprise in finding the grave of Wilfred Owen in Oars. Graves of the Chinese Labour Corps, who died 1919, probably from Spanish flu. A memorial such as Le Cateau, where the Germans were turned back in 1914. The brooding soldier at Saint-Julien, Canadian Memorial for the first gas attack, and especially the Tank Museum at Cambrai. So we get to see all of these things, while Adam is, of course, concentrating on which cemetery we go to next.
Amazing. Yeah. It's something to be able to see these sites and to stand and like reflect, like to see the brooding soldier. Like I got to see it at night last year. My bed and breakfast was like right down the street from it. So I was coming back and it was like late at night and it was all lit up and it was stunning. And like, wow, how lucky am I to like stand here at night and see it lit up, you know? So amazing. Yeah, I totally get it. So moving into our final question here is, we've talked a lot about the Victoria Cross. Let's talk about some of the recipients. Who are some of the men who stand out for you?
If I may go first, because Adam has more detail than I do.
Please.
Probably more interesting as well. I'd just like to mention two. Brigadier General Roland Boys Bradford. We found him, or his gravestone, unfortunately, in Hermes Cemetery. I was shocked that at 25 years old, he was already a brigadier general.
Okay.
I get that in wartime, people are promoted quickly, but the average age of a brigadier in the British Army is 50 years old. And at 25 years old, he's commanding 5,000 men. It's remarkable, isn't it?
Yes.
The second part of that is he also had a brother, a lieutenant, or lieutenant, as you say, Commander George Bradford, who died in 1918 during the Zeebrugge raid. And he was also awarded the Victoria Cross. So there you've got two brothers who have Victoria Crosses.
Oh, wow.
My second recipient is the only Victoria Cross holder who did not belong to the British or Commonwealth armies.
Okay.
In 1921, a Victoria Cross was awarded to the American unknown soldier, solidifying a symbolic honour between the two nations and, of course, as a mark of respect. We saw the memorial several years ago in Arlington Military Cemetery in Washington. Of course, the US gave the Medal of Honor to the British unknown soldier. Just as an aside, no VC was given to the French unknown soldier or the Belgian unknown soldier, only the British one. I'm not quite sure why, but anyway, they're the two men who stand out for me. Thank you.
Interesting. Adam?
I'm going to give you three, particularly from the First World War.
Yeah.
There are obviously, so I think I want to give you one that is probably very well known, one that I think is an absolute badass, and then one that is, although they all are,
Right.
but this guy resonates a little bit of a rebel, I think, and then a third one which is more personal to me. So I think the first one is Noel Shivas, the army medic, the only man to be given two Victoria Crosses in World War One, although not the only one to get two Victoria Crosses. He received his second posthumously, where he the second one basically so the first one was in Guillemot in 1916, and then the second one was in I can never pronounce this, Vietel, I think that's the way it's pronounced. And basically what happened with him is he was in a dugout that got bombed. Lots of his comrades his pals were injured, and he himself was severely injured, and he walked about 1.5 miles to get some help, and then carried on attending to all of the wounded whilst he was severely wounded. Absolute, for me, that when you read the story, it's fantastic. It's and he's a fascinating guy. He was an Olympian. He studied at Oxford. He was an Oxford graduate. So an absolutely fantastic, fascinating guy, and well-deserved bar to his VC award. As I said, only one that won two in the World War One alone. Arthur Martin Leake, who I nearly said also won his second. He won his first in the Boer War. Second guy for me is a guy called Thomas Jones, Private Thomas Jones.
Okay.
Thomas Jones, a little bit like Sergeant York, the American Sergeant York.
Okay.
Single-handedly captured 102 Germans without any support. He was at Morville, and he was with the Cheshires, and they'd taken their position and they were digging in, but they were being sniped at. He asked his officer if he could have a go at them, to which his officer said no. And then shortly after that, one of his friends was killed. This must have made him snap a little bit, so he ran 200 yards into no man's land on his own. His officer shouting him back, and with a few choice words, basically said, "No, I'm not coming back. I'd rather die fighting than digging." Got into the trench on his own, killed about 15 men with his rifle. Wow. Then found a bunch of German grenades and made 102 Germans surrender. And then he realised he was on his own and had to figure out how to get them back. Eventually, a couple of his friends who were stretcher bearers, thought he was dead, so went to try and find him, and obviously came over and found that he had 102 Germans surrendered. So not only that, before that, he fought a German officer with a bayonet, won, and stole his Iron Cross. So yeah, a real story there for him, and that's obviously just one of many. And then the third one, which is a more personal one for me, is a guy called Fred Greaves. He was awarded his Victoria Cross for actions at Polkapelle in October 1917. But what makes him stand out for me is the connection that I feel through place. Greaves was raised in the same village as I was. And I've actually been in his house that he grew up in, which was about 10 minutes away from where I grew up. Unfortunately, died 14 years before I was born, but I've always felt that sense of connection, having been in his house and walked the footsteps of where he's walked.
Right. Wow. Amazing. Oh my God. Like all of these stories and with this home connection for you. Like these are real people, and he went on and lived post-war and wow, there's a lot you can talk about. Just you with starting with, you're about to start your podcast, and I was asked once, like, oh, you're doing a podcast on World War I. Is there a lot to talk about with that? And I'm like, my God, you have zero idea. Like, I will never cover, 1/1000th or 1/1,000,000th of all the stories that have happened, So you've got your work cut out for you too. There's so much to talk about.
Well, we hope we're as successful as you.
I bet you guys will be. This is going to be awesome. Adam, you were going to say something?
No, I was just going to say, yeah, I mean, you're correct. I mean, we've got 1,358 stories to tell just of the acts alone, let alone all the intertwining stories. Just as an example, the medic who treated Shavas before he died was Arthur Martin-Leake, the other
amazing
bar winner. So
the only time in history.
Yeah, the only time in history. The other one was a guy called Charles Upham, a New Zealand guy. So yeah, those stories, fascinating.
Oh, amazing!
So many to tell.
Yeah, wow, amazing. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Thanks for listening to it for the last 10 years. You guys are real troopers, and I very much appreciate it. And I can't wait to now start listening to your podcast. This is so cool.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you. And we'll do what we can here to help get the word out about the Victoria Cross and history of it. And as soon as we can, we will be promoting your podcast as well. So thank you guys so much for coming on.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.